Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our History Virtual Open House. My name is Michael Francisco, and I'm one of the international admission counselors that supports our international students. And today I have the privilege of being joined by our very own professor, chair of the History Department, Jonathan Sharkin. He's going to be telling us about all the wonderful opportunities in the History Department, as well as provide an overview of what you can expect if you are considering to pursue your studies within the history department. And I'm going to invite him to do a quick introduction while I pull up his presentation slides.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. My name is Jonathan Sharkin. I'm the chair of the history department. I'm an associate professor in the department, and this is my 15th year at DU. It's also my fourth year as chair of the department.
While we're going through the presentation, I'd like to invite you to drop in some questions by using the Q&A feature. And if there are some general questions that I'm able to answer, I'll be typing the responses in the chat. Also, if there are more difficult questions or specific to the history department, I'll be saving them for the end for our professor to answer them live. And with that, I'll hand it over and let me initiate that sharing of the presentation.
Sure. Great. So I'll repeat this multiple times, but the first thing I just want to note is our department is undergraduate only, which is why I titled this Focus on Undergraduate Education. So Michael, would you mind moving to the next slide, please? So just to give you an overview of our department, we have 13 full-time tenure track faculty members. For a mid-sized private school, that's a good amount. We're a decent-sized department. I went to two state schools. I went to the University of Delaware and UC Santa Barbara. So if we're comparing it to those schools, we don't have a big department. I think Santa Barbara had like 50 to 55 faculty members. Delaware probably had between 30 and 40. But we do have, again, we do have 13. And if you look to the right, you can see the teaching areas. We do have a lot of coverage. So we have Professor Patel, who focuses on African history. We have five colleagues who focus on either US or Native American history. We have three colleagues who focus on early modern or modern European history. We have one colleague who focuses on East Asian history. We have one, and it's me, who focuses on Middle Eastern history, another who focuses on Latin American history, and then a final colleague who focuses on ancient and medieval. I should have included medieval and medieval history as well. So I do want to note, again, even though we have 13 faculty members, we cover a lot of ground. We are, as I've already mentioned, solely focused on undergraduate teaching. And I also want to note, and I'll emphasize this later again, that we are also advisors. So every major in our department gets individual advising from a tenure track faculty member in our department. And in terms of our teaching load, our faculty teach five classes over 3 quarters. And plus, we do capstone advising. And I'll say a little bit about capstone advising in a little while. Michael, would you mind moving forward, please? So some curricular highlights. Our department, all of our courses are 4 credit courses. I will say sometimes students will do study abroad, and because we're on the quarter system, and when students study abroad, they tend to be at semester institutions. Those courses transfer back as 6 credits. And so here I'm just stating what the minimums are. The minimum at for our major is 44 credits, which if you took them all at DU, that would be 11 courses. I won't, bore everyone with all of the like the different numbers, but just suffice to say that they're equally divided between lower division and upper division. There are 4 courses that all students need to take. One of them is Issues in Comparative History. It's a co-taught course. There are two faculty members in who teach together from our department. It's normally offered once per year in winter. We have another course called What is History, which is offered in spring. And normally students take Issues winter of junior year and What is History spring of junior year to prepare them for Senior Seminar 1 and 2, which are respectively fall and winter of senior year. In Senior Seminar 1 and 2, 1 day a week, all of the graduating students meet as a full class to prepare for their thesis projects because at the end of Senior Seminar 2, all students write a 25 to 30 page original research paper. So on Tuesday, both in seniors, it's normally, it could be on Monday, but either on Monday or Tuesday, our classes tend to be 2 sessions per week. All students will meet with the entire class and a dedicated professor from that class. So I taught Senior Seminar 1 this year. We have Professor Hillary Smith, who's our East Asian specialist, teaching Senior Seminar 2. And then on the other day, instead of having class, every student meets for about an hour with an assigned faculty mentor who works with them for 20 weeks very intensively, at least, again, on average, about an hour a week, plus a lot of students, reach out for additional time or send a lot of additional emails. So we're, basically constantly advising them. And so Senior Seminar 1 and 2 is not only a thesis course, but it's really an intensive mentorship course where a student will not only be in class and have the cohort experience with their entire graduating class, but will get intensive mentorship by a faculty member throughout the first 2 quarters. I should also note that, and this is just my experience, our lower division courses, meaning our 1,000 level classes, tend to be a little different than those at bigger schools. The schools I went to, which I'm really happy I went to, had very large introductory courses, and in some cases, the professors weren't always super excited to teach them because they were sort of like pre-created courses that the departments just had to fill. At DU, we don't do that. All of our 1,000 level courses are courses that a professor in our department has created and is excited to teach. Plus, our numbers are capped at 35, so they're relatively small courses. And so, what I do want to really emphasize, and this goes for all of the courses with the exception of issues, What is History, Senior Seminar 1 and 2, every other course at the 1,000, 2,000, and 3,000 level are all courses that the professor him or herself has created. And so they are always excited to teach those courses. And I think that really comes through in the instruction. And I think it's also why we have not only been a pretty successful major, but we continue to be a growing major. Michael, do you mind going forward 1 slide, please? And in addition to classroom work and the thesis, our students do have additional opportunities. Um, for the last, like, I want to say 5 or 6 years, Professor Carol Hostowski, who's an expert in modern European, specifically Italian history, and Professor Elizabeth Escobedo, who's a historian of modern US history and specifically Mexican American history, have worked with the department, with the grant through the Department of, I believe it's Veterans Affairs, to put together what's known as the Veterans Legacy Program, where we've had students from our major do work. In some cases, I think they've received stipends and credit at Fort Logan National Cemetery, which is a national cemetery around 6 to 7 miles southeast of campus. And they've, gone through part of that cemetery working with local veterans groups to tell enriching stories and stories that people wouldn't have, heard before about some of the people who were buried in the cemetery. And so it's been, I think, a really worthwhile project. I know many of the veterans groups in the local area have been very pleased and have even come to check out the students' work. The students had an exhibition a few years ago at the Anderson Academic Commons, which is our library. So I do want to note that kind of work does happen. I think Professors Salstowski and Escobedo are trying to put together sort of another program, and they've created a course on veterans history at the 1,000 level that is now going to be regularly offered, probably if not every year, every other year by one of them. And they're both tenured professors, so they will be here for a while. We also do have internships. We have a dedicated internship coordinator that rotates each year, who is tasked with trying to help students find internships. We also do have an endowment in our department specifically meant to support students who are doing internship work. So I do want to stress that students have the opportunity to do internships. In some instances, they've done internships at local institutions, and in other instances, we've had students go to other states to do their internship, and we have been able to provide support. We also do have a couple professors who offer service learning courses, so courses that are meant to provide service to the community while also having obviously a very robust educational component. I know Professor Elizabeth Escobedo tends to teach at least one of these every couple of years. And I also want to note that for the thesis, we do have dedicated endowment funds to support student research. In many instances, it's not enough to do research abroad, but we normally do have enough money if students wanted to go to a presidential library or the National Archives or another municipal or other archive within the continental United States. We've been able to fund students to be able to do that kind of research for a few days up to a week. And a lot of times that will happen in December. Over the break between fall quarter and winter quarter, thus in other words, between senior seminar one and senior seminar two. So, Michael, would you mind moving forward one slide, please? So now I get to sort of say a couple other things. So, like, why consider history at DU? I want to once again re-emphasize the strong faculty mentoring and advising. Every student gets a faculty mentor. Um, even first year students would. Now, I don't know how much all of you know about DU's first year student or seminar program. Every student, regardless of their major, their primary academic advisor is their first year seminar advisor, who they will have a class with each fall. However, they will be assigned if students have majors at that point, they will also be assigned an advisor from that specific major. But starting in year two, your students' major advisors become their primary advisors. And so, history faculty members do advise first year students, but we really pick it up second year. And then second through fourth year students will have that really intensive advising in our course, culminating in the 2-quarter mentorship during senior year. And whoever students end up with as their faculty mentor for senior year, that person, even if they hadn't been before, becomes the student's main advisor. And so there's some real benefits to this. We get to know our students. We really get to help our students. We are constantly around to provide students with advice. And I also want to note that between the intensive advising and then the mentorship senior year, I'm all of our students, especially, as long as they're doing their work, can come out of our program with at least one and normally at least two faculty members who can write really strong letters of recommendation for them or act as really strong references for them, whether they're applying to graduate programs, applying to other internships after they graduate, or applying to jobs in the private and public sector. And so I do really think, I know I've stressed this already, I really do think this is where our major and our faculty add a lot of value. And I do want to just say that our faculty are phenomenal, not just in terms of being scholars and teachers, but they're really good people. They have strong interpersonal skills. I think our major has grown largely because of, I think the great faculty we have. Students also in our major will develop transferable research and writing skills. There are courses that are pretty writing intensive, especially at the 3000 level. And then obviously the thesis itself is both research and writing intensive. And so these sort of soft but transferable interpersonal and communicative skills, students will continue to develop those in our major. And I do want to note, and I've said this before, we have consistently strong major numbers. A lot of history departments around the country have lost numbers over the last decade, 10 to 15 years. Our major has actually grown. When I got here in 2010, we were pretty consistently between, I would say, 55 and 65 majors. Right now, it looks like we're gonna end the year with close to 120 majors. And since my immediate successor or predecessor, Carol Helstowski, who was the previous chair, since her last year, we've basically been averaging over 100 majors per year, which at least in our department's institutional memory is the highest amount of majors we've ever had. So I'm really proud of that. Our department's really proud of that. But I also want to stress that the major numbers are still small enough that we have a workable cohort. We tend to have 25 to 30 students writing the thesis each year. And so these students are working with one another. They tend to be in a lot of courses with one another. The way we run the capstone program, they all take at least two courses and normally 3 to 4 consecutively with one another between winter quarter junior year and winter quarter senior year. And so there's the cohort experience. Students get to make, in many instances, really good friend, or they get to develop strong friendships. And it also provides them, in my view, and I don't know how many students take advantage of this, but really good networking opportunities for the future. And in terms of post-DU careers, we've had students do a lot of things. We've had multiple students get into really high-level law programs coming from our major. I personally have advised students who have gone on, in addition to studying law at DU, studying law at Northwestern and also at the University of Chicago. So we have had students, again, go to some of these prestigious law programs, and these students have been excellent students, but I also do think that the fact that we can write really strong letters of and personalized letters of recommendation helps at least on the margins. We have had students go and work in local government. We've had a lot of students go into education. I do want to highlight that for students who are interested in going into secondary education, there's a 4+1 program at DU. We are not necessarily affiliated with it. It's through the Morgridge School of Education. But we have had many students over the last 3 years since this program started begin their graduate work in education concurrently with finishing our major. And we have had some students who have gone on to become teachers in the Denver public school system. And we also have students who go into the private sector, consulting, sales, and various other fields. So, Michael, would you go on one more, please? And then why DU from my perspective, and why history from my perspective. And I say this as somewhat of a reclusive only child. We do have collegiality within our department and within departments across campus. So you'll see, and students will see that the faculty, a lot of the faculty, we've been here for a while. We plan to be here. This is a good job. It's a great location. We tend to, want to be on campus, and students can see that most of us, I think, have really strong relationships with one another. I love the ability to work closely with students in the classroom and through advising. Personally, in my department, I'm really happy that we don't have a graduate program. I love working with students on the undergraduate level. I think history on the graduate level sometimes is can be a tough degree because most graduate programs are preparing students for professorships, and there aren't a ton of them these days. On the undergraduate level, on the other hand, it's broader. We're preparing students to work in diverse fields. And so I really feel that resonates with me. I always try to push our students to think broadly about the kinds of careers or opportunities they can take on after graduating. Denver's a vibrant city near a lot of interesting sites. I know most students will focus on the mountains. I'm someone who actually likes to take drives through the plains. I think that they are massively underrated. But I also recognize that 99% of students will prefer the mountains. And I'll also note there are numerous campus events. We do have some within our department. Our college, the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, tends to have multiple events each week. And then the university at that level, there are basically events every day or every other day somewhere on campus. So there are numerous campus events pretty consistently throughout the academic year and even some during the summer. So I do want to stress it's a very active campus intellectually. Would you mind going forward, Michael? I think this will be my last slide. Yep. So if anyone does need to contact me or would like any questions, my email address is just my first name dot my last name at du.edu. I'm available also if anyone comes to campus, wants to have a meeting. I am very happy to do that. I'm very happy to jump on a Zoom meeting with anyone. I'm also very happy to correspond via email. So please do not be afraid or hesitant to reach out. I would love to discuss our program. I'm always happy to answer questions. And if students have any advice or want any advice, I'm always happy to provide any about undergraduate education at DU. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing that information, Professor. I'm curious for students that are navigating the application process and are applying as undecided, what are some recommendations that you would offer them to consider focusing on a history major, for example, or just dipping their toes?
Yeah, it's we're an easy major to add. I would recommend that if students are interested in, they come in undecided and they're considering a history major, for students who are not bringing in credit that will transfer at the 1000 level, maybe consider taking a 1000 level history course first quarter or second quarter, or potentially even a 2000 level history course if those students already have credit from AP or IB at the 1000 level. We also do have three professors, Professor Elizabeth Escobedo, Professor William Philpott, who's a U.S. historian as well, and Professor Rafael Lloris, who's our professor of Latin American history, who are teaching first year seminars. So students could try to look for their first year seminar courses. Now, those courses don't count for history, they count towards the common curriculum, but students would get a chance to get to know a history professor that way. And that history professor would be their first year advisor because they'd be an FSEM advisor. And I want to note the advice I'm giving here could work for really any humanities, social science major, not just history. If students are interested, I would, and thank you, Michael, for asking this question because it allows me to make this point. Look at the common curriculum as an opportunity. I think some students look at it as an obstacle, get it out of the way, these general education courses so they can jump into their major. And I really want students to look at these as an opportunity to explore different subjects. And I say that as someone who, when I was 18, 19, didn't view it like that at Delaware. I viewed them as courses I just needed to take to jump into my major. And it was only in my 30s when I started, 15, 20 years later, when I started developing different hobbies that I thought, wow, I really wish I had paid more attention in my econ or taken more econ courses or taken the time to take more ecology courses. And I had to basically teach myself things I could have actually been exposed to when I was 18, 19.
That is awesome. And that is certainly the strengths of a liberal arts education. You are able to really immerse yourself in various areas. When it comes to diving deep into the history department, you mentioned that it is heavy on the reading and writing. For some students that maybe that's not their strength or they're not at that level yet, what are some resources that they can expect on campus or within your department?
So generally on campus, students do have access to the Writing Center, where you have graduate students in the DU Writing program who are housed in the Anderson Academic Commons, who can provide support with students who do want some extra support with writing. That is free. That is part of part of tuition. That is a resource for all students, undergraduate and graduate. I think faculty can even take students up on that if we want to. And in fact, for seniors, I have the writing consultants run a workshop for our seniors anyway. So there are ways of integrating that. Um, Beyond that, though, if students do have an actual accommodation, it is worth noting that they have to get that registered through the Disability Service Program, and faculty members won't know about that unless the students actually, once they get it registered, send them. I believe it's a FERPA and probably a HIPAA violation for us to have that information unless students inform us of that. I will say that if students, do tell professors about that. The professors obviously will honor the accommodations, that the students have. And in many instances, some students, especially I know coming from the pandemic, it's been a tough 4 or 5 years. Um, we have in some of our courses reduced reading a bit, especially in the earlier courses, and many of our faculty try to find alternate ways of communicating material. Like for example, use a lot of podcasts in my courses now because I think it's a good way to also get the same points across. Students can hear academics talk. They can also do it outside. They can enjoy themselves. I think that that's also a healthy way to do it as opposed to just sitting in your room and reading all day. And I'll also note that in some of our courses, I mean, we really focus on helping students understand the texts, walking them through some of the texts, teaching them or helping them develop skills to identify arguments. And then students, in terms of writing, will get a lot of feedback. in our department. So our faculty members will also provide them with a lot of feedback. And I know I'm going on a ramble here, but I just want to highlight faculty members are really available for office hours. We all have to have office hours. It's part of our job. Most of us have extra office hours in addition to the office hours we have to hold. And so I would just recommend that any student who has questions about any of that, here I'm talking about enrolled students, just go to their faculty members, go to visit their professor. We want to see students in our offices.
Amazing. And yes, our professors are truly available and always ready to support and mentor our students on campus. We also have an amazing study abroad program. And where do you see some of our students majoring in history going to study abroad?
So that's funny. I just had that question yesterday as well, from a prospective student. So the four that jump out to me are we send a lot of students to a university in Berlin, another one in Amsterdam. We have a lot of students who study in the UK, and then a lot of students who study in Italy. Those are the four that just jump out to me because I often see a lot of transfer credit requests from those universities. But I will note, like we've had students study abroad in Greece, in Spain. We get a good amount who study in Latin America, Australia, Japan. I've advised students who have studied abroad in both Jordan and Morocco, in addition to Israel. We've had students study abroad in South Africa. So there are a lot of opportunities. The four I mentioned are just the ones that I tend to see the most. But on a given year, we'll have majors studying in 10 different countries.
That's amazing. And on the topic of majors, what are some popular combinations of majors or minors that students within the history department and that you've seen them combine or create their own plans?
Yeah, it's so within the College of Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences, it's really easy to double major. I would say the one that I see the most is probably history, political science. We get a lot of, and political science is also, I mean, I can't say enough good things about their department. They're also undergraduate only. We get a lot of history, English double majors. In terms of, and also if we look outside of the college, so another unit on campus that's also a BA degree, we have a lot of students who do the history international studies major as well. I would say that we have, in terms of minors, it's all over the place. I mean, we have students who minor in a lot of different fields, including even business. We sometimes have students who pick up science minors. It's somewhat difficult to do a dual BA BS, so we don't have a lot of students who are double majors in science, a science subject and history, though we do have some. Students just need to know that they'll need some pretty intensive advising on the science side as well to ensure that they're hitting their requirements. Um, and I will also note that we have a lot of students who have language as a minor. A good amount of students who end up with Spanish as a minor, or some students who end up taking, say, East Asian history, and they'll end up with a minor in either Japanese or Chinese.
Amazing. And lots of opportunities for all of you that know exactly what you want to study or that are still undecided. We're a great place to really get your passion search going. And also, as you've heard from our very own Professor Jonathan, there's also a lot of mentorship available to guide you and find the fire that will fuel you moving forward. I believe that brings us to our time. We sincerely thank you all for joining us. Professor Jonathan, it is a pleasure to have you with us and just give an amazing overview of the wonderful opportunities available within the history department and also the community that's available in terms of making connections, networking, and developing those friendships or those cohorts. It is wonderful. Once you get through week 5, you're all in it together. And then by the time week 8 comes through, you're just kind of warming up to each other and you don't want the quarter to end. So I love that y'all have already structured the cohort system so that they are able to reconnect again and move together.
Yep. And thank you, Michael, for your support here and for helping me with these questions. And thank you, everyone. And I just want to stress again, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'm always available.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much. And we're also available to support you in the admission office as well. We're just an email away or a phone call away at admission@du.edu. And thank you all. We wish you all a wonderful evening.